One of the things that's very challenging, probably for most people listening to this podcast that haven't been around government procurement, is the way governments set markets and the way they seed money projects. The money is a public utility. It's freely created by the government. They don't pay that money directly to people. They pay that to the business, and the business decides how to distribute it through society. There's a very unelected, non-democratic means of distribution, just starting with the very first dollar spent by the government. And as a result of that, the closest thing we've got is our government telling them, this is something we want done, and you've bid on it, so this is what you must do. Our governments are not providing for real goods and services for regular people. They're not producing the means by which we can bring about equality. In fact, the government in the United States is content with allowing us to predate on the global South, using them as our production farm while stripping away labor in the United States. Michael Hudson told me it's impossible to bring production back to the U.S. as long as there's a class war going on. It's a complete contradiction to say, yes, we're going to bring production back to the U.S. while waging a class war against labor. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think the internationalist dimension is really vital here. It's clear that the way that capital in the core operates is not only by exploiting the domestic working class, but also by super exploiting the working classes and the peasantries of the global South. And the very high levels of material and energy consumption that are enjoyed by particularly capital in the core are sustained by this massive net appropriation of materials and energy and productive capacity from the global South. And if that's not part of the equation for us, I think we're clearly missing the point. Now, to some extent, that kind of imperialist appropriation from the global South has been used to assuage class tensions in the core by saying, look, capital has denied the basic demands of the labor movement of the 20th century, which were basically much more radical than anything we have today. They wanted universal public services. They wanted job guarantees. They wanted more democratic control over production. All of that was effectively denied. A little bit of public services were given the social democracy of Western Europe and so on. The US has a little bit as well. But the main principles that they were after, and this was informed by the socialist movement that gave rise to the labor movement, dignity and freedom and democracy and autonomy, like these principles were denied them. And instead, what they were sold was a very shallow dream, a dream of cheap consumer items, made cheap because of the super exploitation of global South workers. And so it's this real unfortunate bargain, and a very violent bargain, let's also say, that allows some of the class tension in the core to be resolved this way. And I think it's crucial that we, as members of labor movements or other progressive forces in the core, look past that and find ways to recover the more radical demands that the labor movements of the 20th century had, including, by the way, solidarity with the working classes and the peasantries of the global South. And that has been almost completely obliterated from the platform of the unions, the progressive parties in the core today, and it urgently needs to be restored. Especially now in the era of climate breakdown, it's very clear that all of our futures are bound together and no one is free, and we have a just and ecological world for all.